Research is a word students hear very often. Teachers mention it, universities expect it, assignments require it. But surprisingly, many people begin research tasks without ever being clearly told what research actually means. As a result, research can feel confusing, overwhelming, or even intimidating. So in this video, let's simplify it. At its core, research is a structured way of finding answers to important questions. It begins with curiosity. You want to understand something better, but instead of guessing or relying on assumptions, you look for reliable information that helps you reach a thoughtful conclusion. In other words, research is not simply about collecting information. It is a process of investigation. You start with a question, you search for evidence, you evaluate what you find, and then you explain what that information means. This process helps you move from curiosity to understanding. To make this clearer, let's consider a simple example. Imagine you are thinking about buying a new phone. You probably would not choose one randomly. Instead, you might search online for reviews. You might compare prices. You might watch comparison videos. Or you might ask friends about their experiences. You gather information. You compare different sources. You decide what makes the most sense. That is research. You are asking questions, gathering evidence, and making an informed decision. Research in school or university works in a very similar way. The difference is that academic research requires a more structured approach. Instead of informal sources, you use reliable and credible materials such as books, academic articles, official reports, and trusted websites. And instead of simply forming an opinion, you explain your findings clearly and logically. This brings us to an important point. Research is not about sounding complicated. Many students believe that research means writing long paragraphs filled with complex language, but that is not the purpose of research. The purpose of research is understanding. Good research focuses on clarity. It focuses on asking meaningful questions. It focuses on interpreting information thoughtfully, and it focuses on explaining ideas in a way that others can understand. Another misconception is that research is about copying information. But copying does not demonstrate understanding. Research requires thinking. It requires you to ask yourself questions such as, what does this information mean? How does it answer my research question? And how does it connect with other sources I have found? These kinds of questions transform information into knowledge, and that is the real value of research. When you understand research as a process rather than a task, it becomes much less intimidating. You realize that research follows a series of logical steps. First, you identify a clear question. Second, you gather information from reliable sources. Third, you analyze and organize the information. And finally, you explain your conclusions clearly. Each step builds on the previous one, and with practice, this process becomes easier and more natural. This is why learning research skills early can be incredibly valuable. When students begin developing research foundations from the age of 13 and above, they gain an advantage. They approach GCSE assignments with more confidence. A-Level essays become easier to structure, and when they reach university, research no longer feels unfamiliar. Instead, it feels like a skill they have already developed. But these foundations are equally helpful for adult learners. If you are returning to education, starting a university program later in life, or conducting research for the first time in your career, understanding these basics can make the process much smoother. Research does not have to be intimidating. It simply requires structure. Once you understand the process, research becomes a powerful tool for learning, problem solving, and informed decision making. If you would like a structured step-by-step guide that helps you apply these ideas in practice, I have created a research starter toolkit designed for learners aged 13 and above, as well as adult beginners. It walks through the foundations of research in a clear and practical way. You can find details in the About section of this channel. And on this channel, I will continue sharing simple, structured guidance to help you build strong research skills. If that would be helpful, consider subscribing. Because once you understand how research works, it stops feeling overwhelming. Instead, it becomes a skill that supports learning for life.